Ooh, great. I saw that. We're now streaming live on YouTube. That's exciting.
Yes, we did some work with that with the sessions last week, and that way it allows, if we ever go over our maximum number, people can watch that, but it also will automatically
great. I saw that.
get
We're
it
now
recorded.
streaming live on YouTube. That's exciting. Uh-oh.
Yes. Sorry, just a moment. All right, now I have it muted.
That's awesome, though. Thank you for setting that up. We are 7 o'clock. We are missing, let's see, Bob and Brian. Give them another minute. Yeah.
Greg, is the YouTube channel also translating it to Spanish as live feed?
I have not tested that. The only way it would do it is if you turn on auto captioning, and you can also change languages, which I have not tested yet.
Okay, got it.
Okay, 7:01. Hopefully Bob will join us here any minute. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Newberg School District Board of Directors. So let's see. Tonight, our agenda is pretty full. We'll have public comment, move into superintendent, first board, then superintendent comments. Check out our consent agenda, approve that in minutes. We'll have a monthly financial report from Nikki, a school opening update from Joe and his staff, a construction bond update as well from Joe. Then Greg will present us with some calendar changes. Shiloh will present us with food service contracts, and we'll hear from Karen regarding the code of conduct revision. After that, we'll take a break, finalize our board goals, designate our committees and ad hoc committees for the year, and then chat about our superintendent evaluation. So it's a pretty heavy meeting. So let's get started. For public comment tonight, we have 6 comments. So I think we could do the 5 minutes of each if you'd like. If you take less than 5 minutes, that's completely appropriate as well. Ron, do you mind being the timekeeper? Okay. What I'll do is I'll call the person who's up, and Greg will push you over from an attendee to a panelist. And then I'll also call the next person who's next in line. I just want to remind everybody to refrain from any personal comments regarding personnel or board members. And let's get started if Ron's ready. First, let's have Brandon Cooper, and after Brandon, we will have Lori.
Brandon has called in, it looks like, so I will only be able to make audio available, no video.
Sure, thank you.
And Brandon, you will need to unmute.
Okay, did that work?
Yes, we can hear you. Just 1 second here. Ron's going to get he's got it. Okay, go ahead, Brandon.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Brandon Cooper. I've got a daughter that's in the Newberg School District right now, and another one that's going to be going into preschool. My family has lived in Newberg for, I don't know, long time, probably 40, 50, 60 years. And when we moved back here years ago, one of the reasons we moved back here was because of the school district. My whole family has gone to school in Newberg, my cousins. And so we were, real happy to do that. And the stuff that I'm seeing this summer has raised a lot of red flags for me. I mean, I understand the issue with our kids not being go back to school is not just you guys. I think that's wrong. I think our kids are missing out on a lot of social development that they need. This virus very rarely affects kids, and there's not a documented case of it going from a kid to an adult anywhere in the world. But I understand that's not a decision that you guys directly make. But more, what I wanted to talk about was this resolution 2020-04 where this board, I guess, felt the need to say or imply that there is systemic racism in Newberg and the Newberg School District. First of all, everybody's against racism. We all teach our kids that. We teach our kids to be kind to everybody, and that skin color means nothing. It's just, that's just something that, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. You be kind to everybody. God made everybody, and that's how you act. So we're all against that. But to imply that this town and that this city has any systemic racism is, to me, unbelievable. And I think it's an insult to the people of Newberg. This town has great people in it. My uncle just retired as the chief of police a few weeks ago. And the police in this town are great people. The people of this town are great people. I haven't even been able to find any, not one, racist activity, racist thing. I've talked to families, friends, people that have kids in school, that have gone to school. Nobody can tell me or even cite anything like that ever taking place at a school. And if it did, they would certainly have resources to go to. I believe this was done as a basically your own social justice point, and that whoever came up with this wanted to take it upon themselves to make some political point and jump on this bandwagon in a town that it doesn't exist in. And quite frankly, in my opinion, the term systemic racism is racist in and of itself, because if you actually look at that term, it's a theory, and that theory basically states that if you are a white person, that you are inherently racist, that you're an inherently bad person, that you need to that is just in your DNA, because that's what that term means, that our country was founded on. It's just embedded in the society. And
Brandon,
that is
you have 1 more minute. Since you can't see the screen, I want to let you know you've got 1 more minute.
Okay, thank you. Just categorically untrue. And my concern with some of the emails that I've had with Greg, he cited some actions that you guys were taking on that. And what I've heard with the actions that I've seen school boards take is pushing literature like white fragility on our students, which basically singles out anybody that's white and tells them that they need to repent for that. And I really hope that this school board has not gone so far to the left that they're willing to push left-wing extremist propaganda on our kids. Our kids are just little kids. They need to go to school, learn how to be good people, learn how to care about other people. Why don't we do this? Why don't we teach kids to be great? Let's not handcuff them with something like race and say, because you're this skin color, you need help from other people. Let's just treat everybody the same and stop and just stop all this. Because we're all trying to get our kids out of the school district now because of what we're seeing here. It's just, and I understand I don't have any more time, and I'm sure this falls on deaf ears, but I will tell you this: the people in this town have woken up to the fact that we feel like our town has just been taken over by almost left-wing extremists on this board, on the city council, and in the mayor's office.
Hey,
And
Brandon,
we're not.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Brandon, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's
Okay.
in fact overtime. But I do appreciate your comments, and I thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Lori, and after Lori we will have David.
Hi, I'm Lori Albright, and Brandon, I thank you for your comments. As a teacher in Newberg School District, I have seen racist comments and situations when teachers have been teaching things that they didn't realize was racist. Things like the first Thanksgiving, things like Discovering America. So I want to thank the board for their willingness to learn along with all of us to identify and reduce implicit bias. Even those of us committed to racial equality are learning ways to grow from the situation in our country, which has been growing more severe over the last 200 years. I would encourage the board to look at the website No Micro Project to learn concrete strategies in microaggression interventions and bias reduction. And I really appreciate the things you've planned for this fall for staff. And I wondered if we could include in that teaching specific phrases that are systemically embedded in our vernacular. Phrases like peanut gallery, paper Nazi, call a spade, slaved away at it, blacklist, grandfathered in, cakewalk, lynch mob, uppity. Hangman, and hundreds more. I really appreciate the work you're doing and the difficult discussions you're having, and I appreciate that Brandon shared his perspective also. But as a teacher in Newberg schools for over 25 years, I have witnessed individuals, students and teachers being racially treated unfairly. And I thank you for this work to make all of Newberg inclusive of everyone. Thanks. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, now we have David, and after David, we'll have Shauna.
Hola y muy buenas tardes a todos de la Junta Directiva de Newberg. Quería venir aquí para hablar con ustedes acerca de la necesidad que tenemos en esta Junta Directiva de tener traductores para las personas que no hablan inglés. Esas personas también necesitan estar al tanto de las cosas que están pasando con esta mesa directiva y por eso yo creo que ustedes necesitan tener traducción en español para estas personas. No solamente porque es algo que es bueno para nuestro pueblo, sino porque es algo que es necesario y que es justo. Nuestro pueblo necesita tener más representación aquí en la junta directiva y es algo que ellos no han tenido en mucho tiempo, sino nunca, ¿verdad? Entonces, eso es lo que yo les estoy pidiendo a ustedes ahorita, de que por favor consideren contratar traductores profesionales o personas del distrito que puedan traducir una junta o que puedan, por favor, ustedes tener esta reunión en español también para que ellos puedan escuchar porque ellos también necesitan la información. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, David. I recognized about 4 words in that, and one of them was Newberg, and that is awful for me. But thank you for highlighting the need for translation. All right, now we have Shauna, and after Shauna, we will have Cicely. Hi, Shauna, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry, thank you. My name is Shauna Peterson, and I'm here to represent the Newberg School District Anti-Racist Collective. Over the course of the last few years, staff members of Newberg School District have joined together as a Newberg School District Anti-Racist Collective. We currently stand at over 75 members with a core group of 9 that facilitates our work. We come to you tonight to share our mission statement, our values, and our commitment in hopes that you will join with us. As Newberg School District employees, in alignment with the anti-racism resolution and district equity policy, we condemn racism, racial violence, white supremacy, hate speech, and bigotry in all forms inside and outside of our schools. We share the values of care and safety for all students, honoring race ethnicity, economics, mobility, language, family status, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, initial proficiencies, or religion, and we advocate for equity and justice for our Black, Indigenous people of color and other marginalized communities in Newberg. Our shared values as a group are as follows. Our students and families have a right to an equitable education within the Newberg School District where BIPOC students feel welcomed, seen, empowered, and affirmed. We acknowledge that our system and policies lead to inequities among our students, and that such inequities are not a product of individual student effort or ability. We as employees of the Newberg School District must work to reveal, disrupt, and dismantle systemic racism in our schools and empower people of color by a thorough review of policies, practices, district cultural norms, and curriculum. We believe that all district staff members have the capacity, responsibility, and moral obligation to actively work towards eliminating disparities in student outcomes and to call out racism in all its forms and stand up against injustice. It is urgent that the district and its employees prioritize the individual and collective growth to understand and address racism in our schools and community. The written statement I sent to the board today contains a link to our group's personal mission statement template. And we've invited members of our group to share their examples of personal mission statement commitments to the school board to review. We call on the board to affirm these values and commit to completing your own mission statement based on your role and sphere of influence. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. All right, next we have Cicely, and after Cicely, we will have Andy.
Sorry, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties here getting her on board. It's like halfway there.
There she is. Nope, and she's gone.
Hang on, Cicely, I'm trying it again.
So Bob, are you able to add video? Bob was having some technical difficulties earlier.
Did that work?
No, but I can hear you, so it's a good step.
Okay. Because I clicked on
Yeah,
start
you can-
video.
Cicely, if you can hear me, try. I think when it switches roles, you have to accept something on your screen and it's getting hung at that point. So if you can try to find something to click join as panelists, that will be helpful.
There you go.
Sorry.
Perfect. That's okay. I'm glad you're here. Go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Okay. My name is Cicely Hampton. I just graduated from Newberg High School this year, and I've been a part of the Newberg School District since the beginning. I'd like to share with you all a few comments I've gotten regarding my race. Flat face, chink, China. I'm Korean, by the way. You're pretty for an Asian girl. You must be smart. Do you eat dogs? Ha ha ha. All Asians look the same. When you smile, your eyes disappear. Asians are my type. Where are your eyelashes? At least you're pretty Asian. All of these comments have been said to me in school and even in front of some Newberg School District staff. There was a time I was humiliated with a racist comment in a class activity in front of my 8th grade language arts class, and nothing was said or done. I I've recently come across a statement written by an adult I thought I could trust and count on regarding racism in our school district, and I've been greatly disappointed and let down. I know it can be hard to open up to change and admit there's something really wrong happening, but this is a time where we all need to listen and learn from one another with open hearts and open minds. Racism is real, and you all are in a position to help lift up our voices for those who are experiencing it. And I want to thank you guys for this opportunity to share my experiences.
Thank you, Cicely, for sharing those experiences. It can be very difficult, and I'm glad you came out tonight to tell us. Okay, last we have Andy.
I have not found Andy by name or by the phone number given to us.
Okay. Andy, are you out there? Nope, I will follow up with an email for Andy. Okay, thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Next up, we have board comments. I'll do kind of a round robin and just ask each board member if they have comments this evening. Bob, let's start with you. Do you have any comments?
Yes, I wanted, as always, to thank folks who made public comment, and I always am grateful whenever anybody shares anything that's hard to share. I know it's difficult to get up and share things that are personal and emotional, so I thank everybody that comes to the board and shares that. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that, you know, like a lot of families out there, my family, we've been grappling with how to handle the upcoming school year and comprehensive distance learning. And sort of where we've come to it as a family is really seeing, you know, one way we could go is with the COA, with the Chehalem Online Academy. You know, that's an established program that has a track record of giving excellent online education. But it wouldn't have the same connection to the teachers and the students that the girls have had before. So we've decided to go with the comprehensive distance learning. You know, it's a new thing. It's something where the teachers are a little bit more time to prep than they had in the spring, but are still very new at this. But that connection to their classmates, the connection to their teachers is something that we felt was really important. And everybody's going to come to their own decisions about what's right and wrong for them. But I just wanted to share where we had come to as a family. And both girls are going to do the comprehensive distance learning.
Thanks for sharing, Bob. Dave, do you have comments this evening? You're muted. See, Joe wasn't the first one tonight. Go ahead.
Sorry. Just one. Hi, Lori Albright. I've long time since we talked. Worked with Lori quite a bit in the past. I would like to know, I know words can be powerful. So if there's a list of words out there that you could email me that I couldn't write those down fast enough, that are inappropriate. If you could send those to me, that would be awesome. Some of them made total sense. Others I was kind of, you know, didn't know. So that would be great, Lori, if you could do that. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I agree. Actually, Laura, if you could just send them to the board, that would be, I think, helpful for quite a few of us, me included. Yeah. Rebecca, do you have comments this evening? Okay. Inez, do you have comments this evening?
I do. Sin querer queriendo, David, nos pusimos de acuerdo. Primero que nada, quiero darle las gracias a todas las personas que han estado trabajando duro para que los estudiantes tengan un regreso a clases lo más fácil posible bajo las circunstancias en las que nos encontramos. Sé que no es fácil para nadie intentar un sistema nuevo de aprender. Gracias a todos y a todas por el gran trabajo que se ha hecho para mantener a la comunidad informada. La semana pasada hubo sesiones de información que intentaron ser la guía para lo que se avecina y al mismo tiempo crear un espacio para hacer preguntas necesarias. En especial quiero agradecer y reconocer el trabajo de nuestras intérpretes, Claudia y Jenny. Traducir o interpretar simultáneamente de un idioma a otro es muy difícil y se requiere talento para hacerlo bien. Así que mis respetos. También gracias a todas las familias que toman su tiempo para hacer esas preguntas y estar en contacto con el distrito. Síganlas haciendo para que mejoremos juntos como distrito. Mi observación de las sesiones fue que a pesar que la información se dio en español, nuestra comunidad aún se encuentra sin saber qué es lo que se está comunicando. ¿Por qué? Porque el sistema educativo es como si fuera otro idioma. Si realmente queremos que nuestra comunidad entienda, tenemos que hacer un mejor trabajo para ser equitativos. ¿Qué significa esto? Que tenemos que aumentar los recursos para que mejor entiendan lo que estamos comunicando y lo que está pasando con la educación de sus hijos y hijas. Ahora, ¿por qué decidí hacer mi comentario el día de hoy en español? Para que nos pongamos un momento en los zapatos de la comunidad que no tiene acceso a entender y hagamos un mejor trabajo. Now, you may be wondering what I'm saying or why my comments are in Spanish tonight. I did this intentionally so we can put ourselves in the shoes of the community that doesn't always have access to understanding, whether it be a language or a system. Let us work towards being intentional about being equitable in all aspects, even in how we distribute information.
Thank you, Inez. Brian, do you have comments this evening?
Yes, I do. I want to speak briefly tonight about why I oppose the ideology of anti-racism. The term anti-racism itself is a masterstroke of branding, as it purposefully creates the false implication that anyone who opposes anti-racism must necessarily support racism. Indeed, this is explicitly stated by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, when he writes, "There is no such thing as a non-racist or race-neutral policy." Thus, he eliminates all intellectual middle ground. There's only racism and anti-racism, and they are diametrically opposed to each other. He later confirms in the book the mere act of opposing any racist idea is, by Dr. Kendi's own definition, racist. This binary conception of the world is absurd on its face and cannot, I believe, withstand even a cursory examination of its core assumptions. After all, we live in a world of nuance, not black and white. Even if we agree that a particular problem exists, there are a nearly infinite number of potential ways to address the problem. No person should be allowed the luxury of labeling all policy ideas contrary to their own as racist. Such an arrangement is antithetical to the values of free speech, free thought, and a free society. Dr. Kendi has also written in favor of a constitutional amendment to, and I'm going to quote in full here.
Hey,
Quote,
Brian, I'm going to stop you actually right there because I want to see where these remarks are in regards to anything on our agenda tonight. And I think this is a really important educational topic to have. And I would love to meet with you one-on-one to have a long discussion about this. You can email me your availability, but please let's bring it back to the agenda.
I am speaking as to why I oppose making the board an anti-racist school board.
Would it be more appropriate to have the conversation around the goals?
I would like to read my comments if I may.
Well, you can for sure, as long as they actually pertain to goals or business on the board agenda.
I'm going to read my comments, and I promise you by the end, I will bring it around to how it relates to our goals. Dr. Kendi has written in favor of a constitutional amendment to, quote, establish and permanently fund the Department of Anti-Racism, comprised of formally trained experts on racism and no political appointees. The DOA would be responsible for pre-clearing all local, state, and federal political policies to ensure that they won't yield racial inequity, monitor those policies, and investigate private racist policies when racial inequity surfaces, and monitor public officials for expressions of racist ideas The DOA would be empowered with disciplinary tools to wield over and against policymakers and public officials who do not voluntarily change their racist policy and ideas, end quote. What Dr. Kendi is advocating for here is a thought police staffed with unelected and somehow even unappointed bureaucrats. It's unclear how they would be chosen under this schema, answerable to no one, and entrusted with the vast power to compel and punish racist speech. Just to reiterate, racist speech in this context means any speech opposing an anti-racist idea. The natural implication of all this is that the only ideas that will be allowed in Dr. Kendi's America will be his own. And what Dr.
Again, I'm just confused on how
anti-racial
these words impact our agenda this evening. I want to hear your thoughts on this, but please be concise. We're not here for an academic argument on a book. Thank you.
I will cite our policy that says no board member will be kept from speaking on a topic. So can I finish my remarks? I'm close to being done.
Absolutely. I would like you to finish your remarks, and I want all board members to speak. However, this is a business meeting of the Newberg School District, and I don't think it has anything to do with what Abraham Kendi sees as a
You're
DOA.
putting as our board goals to adopt this ideology. So I don't see how it cannot be related if we're adopting this ideology.
And we can have this conversation in personal anytime you would like, but please keep it to the business of the board.
Perhaps you would let me finish my remarks. What is Dr. Kendi's big anti-racist idea? Simple. It is to erect at all levels of our society a massive race-based structure of discrimination for and against people based on their racial group and that group's perceived historical privilege or oppression. It is a reversal of Jim Crow, as Dr. Kendi writes on page 19, quote, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination." These are the ideas that we are being told we must accept or be slandered as racist. Well, I will not cede this ground. Discrimination based on race is immoral and unjust, even when it is well-intentioned. Dr. Kendi's vision for America, and Dr. Kendi is the person who all of our teachers have been telling me to read. Dr. Kendi's vision for America is bigoted, dystopian, and wrong for our community and our schools. It is deeply disturbing to me that so many, including members of our staff, have come before us and advocated support for this author's ideas, yet none of them have bothered to mention what those ideas actually entail. Maybe this is because they do not know, or maybe this is because they know that if you are not already locked into the binary anti-racist, racist mindset this ideology inculcates, then these ideas sound profoundly racist and objectionable on their face. It is not okay to simply hand wave the extremist positions of Dr. Kendi or defer to them because of his skin color. The ideas must stand on their own and be judged on their merits. We should take the man at his word, read the fine print, and really ask ourselves if we would like to live in Dr. Kendi's America, where folks are intentionally treated differently based on their race, and no one is allowed to speak unless their speech is approved by the Department of Anti-Racism. The objections I have laid out against anti-racism here is not an exhaustive list. I have others. However, I am cognizant of the time this issue is consuming, and I believe the flaws I have already highlighted so gravely undermine its foundational assumptions that the rest of the theory cannot stand. For these reasons, I cannot support the inclusion of this extremist ideology of anti-racism in our board goals. I am absolutely committed to ensuring that our district is providing equal opportunity to all of our students and giving every individual student the resources they need to succeed, irrespective of race. And I would support goals that include language to that effect. Thank you.
Ron, do you have public comments this evening? Sorry, not public. Well, they're public, but they're board public comment.
Yeah, I have one thing I want to talk about a little bit. We've had correspondence from a family in Newberg that was hoping that their child, who's just a little bit too late to make the September 1st deadline for entering kindergarten, whether that child could be, assessed for early entry. And we as a board last spring, and I think it was in May, we actually enacted it. We passed a motion to suspend the early admission to kindergarten policy for this year. And I wanted to make it clear why we did that. And I want to make a suggestion for how we can best accommodate the interests of this family and other families. By the way, I was the lone vote against that resolution. But right now I'm not trying to undermine the intent of that resolution. That was the board's decision. I just want to explain it. We made that decision largely because our staff told us that it was, informed us that the process of evaluating these applications had two dimensions. One was whether the child was ready, intellectually for kindergarten, whether they had the basic knowledge of letters or whatever the academic requirements are. And then the second had to do with whether the child was socially ready for kindergarten. And the difficulty primarily lies in the latter. We could still test for academic ability, but the process of evaluating social readiness involves actually watching the child interact with other children at some length, which was difficult to arrange safely in a COVID environment. We delayed our decision on that for a meeting because we wanted the staff to look at alternatives, whether any districts had figured out a way to do the social assessment without violating COVID restrictions. And the staff reported back that in the effort they'd been able to make in between the two meetings, they had not come up with an alternative. And I believe that's why the board approved suspending the policy for this year. The family that wants to have this happen has written to Joe and then written to Brandy a couple of letters. And as vice chair, I got to see those letters. And I understand their concern and their wishes for their child. And I'm in sympathy with them largely. But this is a policy decision at the board level. It's not something Joe or any other staff member can do anything about. It was a legislative act designed to deal with all the cases that came. It's not really appealable by the normal appeal process. The only way to change it would be for the board to change the policy for everyone. We can't do it in an individual case in this case. And I'm not advocating that we do that. I don't know that the staff would be any better able to do the social assessment now than it was before. And it would be unfair to families who had already made other plans this late. But I do think it might be possible for us to do some kind of accommodation so that this child, if the child is really ready for to be a sort of grade ahead of his age, for this child to have that opportunity. And that is, I recommend that we consider at our next meeting or as soon as we can, an amendment to the policy or to our decision that would say that open some way for this family to do that appeal when we go back to regular face-to-face sessions. Maybe that would be the second semester of this year. Maybe we'd have to wait till next year, depending on how things go, so that they haven't missed their only opportunity because of that event. So I'm going to ask that the chair and the superintendent consider putting this on the agenda in a future meeting. Maybe even the policy committee could, which hasn't gotten to that section of the policies yet in our broad review, but maybe we could jump ahead and have the OSBA people help us devise a formulation of the policy that would give these people who can't have the chance now a chance as soon as we can reasonably do it to have their child assessed for early admission. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ron. I wanted to just quickly echo Bob's sentiments in the beginning regarding sort of family choices and where everybody is ending up for their children. And, after months of discussion and weighing options, our family actually chose to go the COA route, mostly in regards to an ability for both my husband and I to continue to work and have some flexibility in the kids' schedule. But it was a really difficult choice because, potentially leaving those really beloved school communities is a tough thing to do. And I'm hopeful it will only be for a semester, but the virus decides the timeline, as we've all said a million times before. And I think it's really good that we have this diverse sort of representation on the board of what families are choosing and how people are sort of piecing together what they need to do in this time. So thank you for sharing, Bob. All right, next up we have superintendent comments. Joe, are you ready?
Randy, I had a chance to check email, and Andy, who wanted to make public comment, did give a lengthy email comment that he asked to be read. And so I want to at least bring that up to you as chair to let you make a decision on whether you will do that or not.
Okay. We haven't traditionally read email comments, but I would definitely encourage that to be included in the board packet in our minutes. Is
Okay.
that something you can do, Greg? Yeah.
I will do that. It is related to what Director Mock just brought up about it is from the family about kindergarten early application and was wanting a specific action tonight. So.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for letting us know and including it. Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Ok, quería empezar nomás para dar gracias a David y Inés para sus ideas y de subrayando los problemas que tenemos todavía de proveer acceso a todos, nuestra cultura, familias, a nuestras reuniones. So I want to thank both David and Inés for highlighting some of the issues of access that we have for all members of our community when it comes to board meetings, underlining the base level things that we need to work on. So appreciate those comments. Also wanted to welcome, I've been involved in several of the final interviews for new staff. So we have some new staff coming in. So I just wanted to welcome them. Some of them happening today. We have some interviews tomorrow. So we're doing those and then welcoming them to a new staff orientation on Thursday. So it's happening quickly for some people. So I wanted to just give a big shout out for welcome joining the team here in Newberg and Dundee. We are glad you're here. Also wanted to thank AJ Schwantz. She has graciously agreed to join Lydia Kyler to help run our PAC for the bond, which is a big undertaking. So I just wanted to give a deep thanks to AJ and to Lydia for helping us work on the political action committee for the bond. And I'll talk a little bit more about how the two organizations work coming up in my bond update. And then finally, I wanted to thank both of our associations. We've been working, we do have a full contract negotiations with our classified. At the same time, we're working through an MOU about working from home and PPE and all of the things that surround a COVID environment, as well as with our licensed staff. And we've been working on those for quite a bit of time, and it takes a lot of effort. I just wanted to thank them. I think the conversations have been lively, but they've been very respectful and really trying to work through all the issues on this. You know, they have large memberships that have lots of needs, and so we've been talking through all those. So I just wanted to thank the leadership of the two associations. I know it's a lot of time, probably a lot of boring time with me, but we've been, I think, making a lot of really good progress. So I just wanted to thank them for their efforts in looking out for both their members and for all the students and families in the community. So they have talked about all of that being exceptionally important to them. So thank you to those, to our leaders for that, and to our members. And then we will be ready to launch school, and we'll talk about that later tonight. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Right, next up we have our consent agenda, and there are quite a few large donations I'd like to recognize on here. We have the Austin Family Foundation, $6,708.80 book for all teachers and administrators. The Austin Family Foundation also donated $50,000 for CTE at-home kits for Newberg High School students. And the Austin Family Foundation donated $74,000 for CTE Fridays at Catalyst High School. Providence Health Services, $10,000 to support diversity and equity work, and combined, those all equal over $140,000. And that is amazing in any community, let alone a community of our size. And I am forever grateful for Providence for doing the mental health support and services that they have helped the district with, and for the Austin Family Foundation in the variety of ways that they have helped support programs throughout the district. So thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion.
Move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, with a motion and a second, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. Okay, next we have our monthly financial report from Nikki. Are you ready?
Evening. I will go over to my financial report here in just a second. This month I decided just to update the June numbers as July 1st to 31st. Doesn't have a lot of activity yet. We don't have a lot of our teachers encumbered for the year and all that additional information for 2021. So what I presented was an update with the additional information that we have for the June 30 numbers. And looking at the notes, it has gone up a bit from last month that I presented, mainly due to encumbrances dropping off and estimates of year-end billings and a lot of that stuff coming through. So as I noted in here, our carryover that we projected in the budget is at 7.5 million. And it looks like we're going to be at about the 8.5 million at this point, or just under that. So we still have the audit adjustments coming through, which oftentimes they tweak our taxes a bit, and that can impact these numbers. It can impact the due back to the state with the 558. But I'm pretty confident at this point that we're ahead of the game a little bit, which is good. In that we're going to have to spend a fair amount extra towards our curriculum next year and our extra technology next year. And just a lot of the unknowns that we have to prepare for and go into our distance learning. So I don't know if you had any additional questions. It's pretty straightforward. Next month, our payroll should all be encumbered for the upcoming year for the most part. So we can see what it looks like going into that time. And possibly we will have our classified negotiations in there where we can make some adjustments with that as well. But anyway, at this point, I would like to see if you had any question on what I presented.
Nikki, I didn't have a question, but just a comment. Looking at that ending fund balance of about $8,466,764, that represents a lot of work and planning on, administration level, staff level, teachers. And it wasn't all that many years ago that our ending fund balance sometimes was as low as, 150,000. We've changed a lot of things in how we operate as a district and how we do things as a board. This focus on the budget and particularly that ending fund balance is one of the biggest changes we've made. And it just really shows the power of keeping your eye on the ball. And I just want to thank all the folks who've contributed to keeping their eye on that ball.
I agree with that. And this is also a reflection of the furlough days at the end of the school year, that our classified took many furlough days and our licensed folks took furlough days, or a day, and administrators did as well. And so that was a way to try to get ahead of the upcoming cuts that we know are supposed to be coming, that we keep being told about in the next biennium. So it's good that we're building that buffer up a little bit, because we know that there's going to be reductions in the future, as well as, we're always dealing with PERS. So any little bit helps. And I know $1 million seems like a huge amount, but in a system this big, it's not as huge as it seems. So it'll be very helpful in keeping the boat straightened out here.
Hey, Nikki. Dave here. I just want to tell you thank you for always having such concise. It's easy to track what you're saying. It's laid out really well, and you really quickly put it all together. So I haven't said it before. I just really appreciate how you bring all the numbers together. You make it real easy to understand. So thank you.
No, thank you. And always, if something comes up, even on off times before the meeting or in between meetings, just call. Sometimes just spending some time works out.
Okay, thank you.
I second what Nikki has said. Nikki and her predecessors have spent a lot of time trying to help me understand things, and I'm not sure it's paid off, but it sure has been appreciated. And so if anybody on the board has that kind of question, I encourage you to go to Nikki and ask. Sorry, Nikki, I just probably made things harder. But.
No, I appreciate questions. It's so much easier than having things swirling around. And if I can learn to explain things better, then that helps me, because I'm not the teacher of the bunch. So sometimes I need to practice a few times to get to say it right for everybody. So definitely.
Are there any other questions for Nikki? Okay, thank you, Nikki. Again, for a concise monthly budget report that is relatively easy to understand. Thank you. Okay, next we have our school opening update with Dr. Morlock.
Okay, well, there's probably no way in the next 3 hours that I could go through all the details that we're working on, so I'm not going to attempt it, but I'm going to give you kind of an overview, and then if there are questions, we have several staff who are on tonight who may be able to answer specific things, but I want to again give you a general overview. As you heard earlier from Ines, we did actually have 2 parent evenings to talk with folks the difference between CDL, the comprehensive distance learning, and our online program. So we had them 2 nights. One night was in English, one night was in Spanish. Both nights had elementary and secondary groupings. It's a really challenging topic to try to tease out the difference between, since they're both online, what the difference is between 2 online programs and the kinds of things. And so we got lots and lots of questions, which I appreciated coming in. And we added those questions to our FAQs. That really helped us generate the information that went back out to people with the questions that we got from them, and as well as we put those in. We had hundreds of parents come to the nights that we had, which was great to see people coming in to get questions answered. All told, just as a quick report on the numbers for our K-8 COA program, that's our Shehalem Online Academy. We currently have about 403 students, maybe 404 students in K-8. Normally that's about 50 total between elementary and secondary. And then at Catalyst, they usually start the year between 110 and maybe 130, somewhere in between there. Catalyst, which is also high school COA, so they do some mixture in there. They have about 208. So all told, we're at 611, 612 kids in our COA / Catalyst programs. Middle school itself, I think, was 161. 43 of those are new to NPS. I don't have the final numbers on how many are going out. It is interesting to hear why people have chosen us rather than other ones, and vice versa, I'm sure it goes. So lots of still movement happening, and we won't know our enrollment numbers for a while until we get into the year. We also know that some folks in kindergarten are keeping their kids out for another year to start when it's in-person kindergarten or something else. We know that that's a choice that some families are making. So that's been very kind of good to get settled down with all of those things. Of course, then we will be moving some staff. We've had some folks volunteer due to certain health issues to want to be online fully, whether we would go back to hybrid or not. And so we're working through the process with our associations about the process to move people. Some people have volunteered, so that makes it easier. So we'll be doing that in the next couple of days and letting people know their assignments. For our secondary parents, yes, I promise your schedules are being worked on. Some of this has to do with staffing. I was at the high school today for a meeting with the administration, and then ran into some counselors who actually had their hair was on fire as they were running around, trying to take care of all the stuff and get the schedules pushed out the door, because they have lots of details to work on. But they are working furiously to get that done for folks. And that's also true for our elementary school class placements. They're going to continue to work on those. Teachers will be meeting starting next week as they come in to finish off some of the class placements, because we have some changes there as well. Again, some of that's due to moving teachers from our buildings to COA, and then others shifting around. And so all of that kind of comes into play as they figure out who the teachers are. One of the questions about COA that has come to us from many folks is, do you provide special education services? Yes, we do. We actually do have 40 of those students across all the grade levels who are identified special needs students. So we will be serving them as if they were going to school with us through CDL or any other way. So that was a question that came up often. We want to make sure that people knew that we would be serving those needs, as well as English learners, emerging bilinguals will also be providing support for those students. We are finalizing putting out all of our procedures for staff in buildings, people who visit buildings. The stickers are going on the floor, the little standing stickers, you know, about where to stand in. PPE supplies are in. We have been kind of collecting those. Larry Hampton has been collecting those for months now. So we have lots and lots of hand sanitizer and gloves and masks and all of those things. Some of those coming from the county, some coming from the state that have been distributed. And so we have been the recipient willingly to take as many of those free supplies as we could, as well as purchasing the ones they need. We are still working on the work from home schedules and what the classroom needs are for folks. We have, as everybody here probably is aware, we will have the next 2 weeks starting on Monday with the majority of staff going through what the year is going to look like. We have curriculum coming in that people are working on, specifically designed, of course, for online delivery, at least K through 8. So we have some vendor meetings they'll be going through and showing us how to use the curriculum, time for our staff to work in PLCs, both across the district like we did in the spring. So grade levels across the district at multiple schools, since they'll all be learning the new thing, as well as in building. And then we, of course, have some work time scheduled because we know that they are going to be working frantically to try to get ready for this next year. And so we're all kind of learning it in together. I did want to highlight back to you know, one of those donations actually helping us from the Austin family. The book that we're using with all instructional staff is actually called a CDL Playbook. So the Comprehensive Distance Learning Playbook, written by some researchers that are going to help us. We're going to use that as one of our framing activities for folks to really learn to focus on how to create a classroom culture online if you've not done those things. You know, behavioral expectations and how you manage those, and some of those just operational things that we're not practiced at. Very few of us in this system were prepared to do these this kind of interaction. So we have some PD specifically targeted for that, and then throughout the year. Also, there we will do a superintendent welcome, and that's on. We'll send you the link if you'd like to log into that. That'll be at 1 p.m. on September 2nd. So we'll do a little bit of a welcome, and we'll kind of talk about the year coming up, and then the kind of training as we go through the school year. So we also have been working on, and you'll hear a little bit of this, I think, from Shiloh later on. He may highlight those, or you can ask questions of him now. Working on meal delivery and how we get those meals out to families using some of our bus systems to do that. As we try to make sure we can make sure that our families get fed who qualify. The same rules do not apply that we have in the summertime currently. There is some political movement to try to move that along so we can feed more kids. But at this time, we will kind of do our normal, quote unquote, normal system, but it'll be more of an Uber Eats and delivering out to homes to those who qualify, and then those who would also like to purchase. So lots of work happening and all of that. So I'm going to pause and see if there are questions. Again, I can answer some, and I also have several staff members who may be able to answer your specific questions if there are some from you. Or if you're tired of hearing me talk the whole time, we can continue on.
Other questions for Joe or Shiloh?
Yeah, I had one.
Go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Joe, you know, I'm a big sports person. If we're not going to be in school and, but we have athletics going on, how is that going to be perceived by the community?
That's actually a really great question. I'm glad that you asked that. There are very specific rules around what the kinds of workouts can be and not be. And it depends upon the 3 levels of the 3 kinds of sports. So either no contact or little contact, medium contact, and full contact. And so they follow the rules set out by the governor, not necessarily by the county counts. So this creates a little bit of confusion because the OSAA follows the things from the governor, but our schools go on county, on county COVID counts. And so there's a little bit of that makes it challenging. I actually, as I mentioned before, I met with the high school administrative team and Tim Burke, who's the athletic director there. We talked about what the plan looks like. size of workouts, all the protocols that they have to follow. Of course, if there is a COVID outbreak, what we have to do to shut those down, whether those count as cohorts, can they be in 2 sports or just 1, what the limits are of the workout. So there's a pretty strict set of rules on those. I don't know how it will go. I'm hoping that we are able to do those things. It sounds like not every sport will be doing a workout as well. So, I can tell you things like football, there's no contact, there's no pads, they can do certain kinds of things that are spread out. So I'm not sure how folks will perceive that, to be honest with you. I think it's a fine line. We have people who want to get their kids involved and be, in sports, and at the same time, it'll be a little bit hampered because we're, wearing masks and spreading out and doing different kinds of things. So there's a lot of complication, and the rules have changed a lot in that too. OSAA held on to the last minute before they finally said, okay, we're going to move all seasons into the winter and try to get a 3-season system. I don't even know if we'll get those seasons in or not, right? So that'll heavily depend upon the kind of progress that the state makes, as a state, as far as the infection rates go. So there's a lot involved in that, and that's a big discussion. The other side of that is also groups that wish to use our facilities or other things, and right now we're limiting those pretty severely because we still have, that puts a burden on us for the kinds of cleaning things that we have to do, and the kind of protocols that we have to require them to do. So we're still easing into that because we have other more pressing things to get done right here to get open. But yeah, no, appreciate your question, Dave. It's a big ball of beeswax and sticky.
Go ahead, Ron.
Joe, just about the time of our last meeting, the governor came out with a exception to the close of schools order that's allowed for certain small groups of kids who would be especially vulnerable if they're left home. I think special needs kids. I think also kids who might need extra help catching up, like English language learners, to come to school. Are we planning to have any of those smaller groups in the school buildings?
Eventually, we're going to work. So it's called limited in person. And so we've talked about, it's not just those, but it also includes CTE. So career and technical ed at the high school is another one of those groups. There are a lot of things to work through before we get to that point where we can offer those services. I know that those are available. I mean, that kind of exceptions out there. There still are some restrictions on those, so we have to work through those. We're not going to start the year that way. We frankly have to try to get this thing up and running, and then there are also some rules around the selections of students that you can and cannot make. So the finer details on there are a little more complicated. But we have been working on what the plans could look like in the future. We have some limited testing right now. When you do speech pathology, for instance, we have shields instead of masks, and we do some other kinds of changes. And so looking at how we can then do some limited in-person instruction. But that, we have to have a whole plan for that. Fortunately, we have a lot of that stuff in our hybrid blueprints that we originally did before we went to CDL. So some of those protocols are in place, but we won't launch that way, but I think we'll eventually get to a place where we need to provide some of those services. And if we're still able to at that time, then we'll explore that and of course bring it to the board and talk about the permutations of what that looks like. Yeah.
Joe, I wanted to echo your appreciation to both the associations on their flexibility during this time, especially in regards to our school calendar. I'm really thankful that they have an extra week there of professional development around this. Has there been any discussion around sort of potential professional development for parents regarding platforms and tech use?
It's interesting to say that. So I'm glad you brought that up. We did or are finishing the hire of our bilingual technology support person who we're specifically putting on for home tech support. And so we've hired that person, and I'm excited to have them start because we know that there's going to be a lot of just how do I get to this thing, or who do I get a hold of, or where can I find my kids this or that. And so we've hired somebody who actually has school technology support experience in their past. And so, being bilingual and bicultural will just help us create a kind of a welcoming environment for that. We did actually talk about how do we provide support for parents who would like to know, how do I create a schedule at home that works? And, what are the things that I should be looking for when I'm asking my kid about their work? Because it just looks different. It's so different. I know that even myself, I had to learn to look differently to figure out if my 8th grader was actually getting his things done or not done. And I had to look in different places. And so, yeah, we've discussed that. We can't quite launch that way, but there are, we know that we'll have to partner far closer with families on this. And that's part of the reason why we've posted and hired a position that's specific to family support on making sure they have somebody to get a hold of when they don't know how to do certain things, at least to begin with, and then transition into some additional kinds of things. And we can always do parent nights and what have you. Since we're all doing these things at a distance, it's as we've seen with our board meetings, far more people can attend because they're at home and they can take care of those things. And I think that is actually a good sign for us. We're going to host our first migrant parent meeting coming up next week, and we're excited about that. We know we'll probably actually have really good attendance because people can be at home, they can still attend the meeting and take care of those other things that they have with family obligations. Yeah.
Any other questions for Joe or Shiloh?
Not a question, but in having that parent night next week, part of the struggle, even in my family, was figuring out Zoom. So is there any support that we're going to provide? Like, this is how you log in, this is how you access the interpretation globe, or I know that my family wasn't able to access interpretation until I arrived.
Right.
So even small, like, this is how you do it.
Right. So yes, and fortunately that whole meeting will be in Spanish. So we'll just start. They won't even have to hit the globe on that one. It'll be that way. So that'll start. Yes, and we also know that as the year goes on, we've got little kids who've been doing this so they can get in and help their parents. And what we've heard from other districts who've been doing this is that it takes off fairly quickly. It might start slowly, but we wanted to get a meeting on the books to start the process because we didn't do a very good job meeting with them in the spring last year. We had every other month meeting. Of course, you came to some of the meetings or all the meetings, and so that's something that we just said we have got to get a meeting on the books to get going. But yeah, we'll provide as much support as we can to make sure we get people in there. I know Jenny has been working on getting a hold of folks to let them know that here's the meeting, here's what's going on, and to make it as easy as possible to get in. I was very pleasantly surprised when we did our parent night last week that lots of questions started to come in. So people found the Q&A thing and they were able to get questions and get them answered as well. So I thought it was pretty good just for us to get it going. But yeah, there's still some work to do. It's interesting to watch the kinds of efforts that people are making to try to get everybody connected. Like, elementary people are going to be doing some pre-conferences to onboard families, right? So they're going to connect with them. Here's what we are trying to do. What kind of support do you need? What things are you missing? We found out partway through the springtime that people were discovering that, oh, it's not going to be okay to just share one device with 3 kids. And we have devices available. So yes, let us know and we will get you a device. We did the same thing in my house. We were out of old laptops that were just too far old. So we got a school Chromebook. And so I think it'll be helpful for us to bring those things in. Part of that whole thing with elementary pre-conferencing is saying, what is it you need? Let's make sure you're connected. This is who I am. This is what I look like. Let's make sure that you know how to connect and get online and do those kind of support things.
Hey, Joe.
Yep.
On that same line, Inez's question there is, for all the parents, I've heard that quite a bit out there. If they had the opportunity to have, it sounds like you mentioned a couple of those right now, but a lot of the people would have that, like if it was a Zoom meeting, or they could pick up a hard packet out front at tables in front of the district office or their school or whatever. But I did hear that a lot out in the community where people were like, I don't know, because, a lot of people don't get on their computer much, they don't do,
right.
They don't they just don't work on a computer. They don't do Facebook, you know, they don't get into all the tech stuff. So I know the kids teach the parents a lot, but I think a lot of the parents would like to, you know, somebody like Luke was sitting there for 30 minutes just saying, hey, you know, tell them stuff. That might be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again back to I mentioned it before, and I called a partnership with our families. We want to make this as successful as possible for everyone, and it is going to be a community learning experience. I mean, we are learning here in the school district about how to do this, but we also know the families are going to be learning how to do it at their houses. And so I actually think those are great ideas about holding more of those. Again, having a home tech support number line, like there's a live body at the other end of that. That's part of that movement toward that. So families won't be so frustrated when it's just, I don't know where to find my kid's homework. And he's not telling me. Not that that ever happens from teenagers, but if it did, if that were a thing that they did, oh no, I did my homework. Then
that starts in elementary school.
Sure. It starts early.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Joe. In an effort to kind of keep us on schedule here, do you mind if we move on to bond updates?
And I have one question again. Can you tell me what the time is for the meeting or meetings next week? I'd like, if possible, I'd like to sit in on them, and I don't have that information in front of me.
Do you mean the my welcome back or the other meetings altogether?
Well, actually, any of them, but you can just email us. If you just
I will email you as we finalize the schedule. We'll email you so you can see where they are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. Take a second and change gears here. We can talk about the bond update.
Great. So as I mentioned before, AJ Schwans has graciously accepted to carry the mantle of being a leader of our PAC, along with Lydia Kyler. So the two of them will be leading that process forward. So I want to explain a little bit about the rules and the differential between what can be said by different groups. So a PAC is an a group that can advocate, can talk about all the positives and go out and try to help people understand why they should vote for the bond. On the other side, anybody who's a paid employee from the district cannot advocate. We can give all the information, we can give you facts, we can give you figures, we can talk about what things would be included or not included, but our comments are relegated to information sharing only. And so as we will be doing some presentations, we've been asked by certain groups across the Newberg and Dundee area to come present. If I present, my part of the presentation is informational. If I'm co-presenting with somebody like Brandy, you could advocate because you're not a paid employee. So you are a board member, but you are not a paid employee of the district. And so there'll be some differentials on those. And so part of that is also about reminding our employees about what they can and cannot say. So that's always kind of part of the challenge as we move forward into this, to be excited about that opportunity. So we'll talk a little bit about what those rules and regs are, but I want people to understand that the district can provide information and a PAC can provide advocacy. So those are the two different things. The PAC has its own budget, it has its own leadership, it has its own group of folks that do that on the side. So just wanted that to be super clear. As I said, we will be talking to some groups. We've already been invited to multiple city groups already, and they're continuing to come in. So we're trying to organize between things at the city, at City Club, at Rotary, at Kiwanis, and any of the groups that have invited us to come to be able to talk to. And we'll also do, of course, information nights. This is going to be a little bit different because we are, in the past work that I've done with bonds, we often will do them at a school so we can show a tour and here's what's happening. And but because of all of our social distancing and masking and the challenges and all of that, I think we will be doing the vast majority of them virtually to do some Q&As and to do some discussions about what's kind of in there and what's not. We'll be working with Right Communications to help develop some of those materials so people can kind of have a better understanding, brick architecture as well, developing some conceptuals. One of the things that will frustrate people is we won't have deep details of every project on the list. And part of that is because we are not in the middle of what's called an evergreen bond project. So some districts have been passing bonds and continue to do maintenance bonds over many years, which means they develop the plans for the next one and they can be prepared with some of those details. So That's always something that kind of frustrates if we don't people because they don't have all the details, but we will not be able to, we would not be spending that money to develop those details with architects and engineers until if we were successful in passing a bond, then we would actually move forward on that. So that's just something that I want to highlight because I know that people always want the latest detail down to the smallest thing sometimes, and I totally understand the frustration. So again, the large part of this now, now that it's on the ballot, we move forward into the next phase of communication. Oregon is a mail-in ballot state, and so a lot of our communications have to be done in the September and early October timeframe as people begin to cast their ballots. So we will be doing more of our informational things here in the next short timeframe weeks to get that out the door to talk to people. So that will be happening across the town. We'll also schedule some evening events for people to attend, Q&A sessions, things like that. We want to make sure we can provide everybody with the information they need to make an informed choice, whichever way they vote. We want to make sure that they understand what the bond covers, and what the needs are of the school district, and then go from there. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are additional questions, but we are in the early stages as well as we're in the heat of it, being that will be in September very soon.
Any questions for Joe around the bond or the PAC? Okay.
I have one, sorry. Joe, you mentioned that you've been a veteran of bonds in other districts. And I have not, so I'm nervous. I'm nervous that we have a relatively short time, shorter than I thought would be ideal to get our message out and to make sure we're answering questions. How do you feel about the time compared to what you've seen in other experiences?
It's a much shorter time frame, yes. We also, when we looked at our polling numbers, we were relatively close as it was. We looked at those numbers. And so I know we have some folks we need to help educate about what's in there, what's not. It's further complicated by being at a distance, frankly, in some ways. In other ways, again, back to what I said about the board meeting being accessible, more people are attending these, and it may actually help us get people so they can listen to the information, because getting out from your family at 6 p.m., I got to run over to the middle school to listen to a bond presentation. It may actually help us get our message out, say, here's what the bond encompasses, here are the things that are there, this is how it's paid for, this is what the cost is to you as a taxpayer, that we can do that remotely. It's a short time frame, yes, for sure, but there are every bond campaign has been different in my experience. And so it's always interesting to see kind of how they shape up. I think that we have a very compelling case because we do have, we have lots of things we have to work on. Again, these are the public's buildings, and we have to continue to, it's within our strategic plan to continue to take care of the facilities we have. And so, when I look over this, considering the long term of the district, I think that it's important for us to continue to improve our facilities to keep them in public use. We're in this weird time where we're not in buildings right now, and it's very strange. But we'll be returning to these public buildings, and in this little blip of time, 18 months of time in our lives, we'll be back in. It seems like forever and ever, right? But because we're right in the middle of it, but really, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very short amount of time.
You said 18 months. I didn't like the 18-month part.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, how many months has it been already? It's been 6.
It's been 6, yeah. 18 would be totally
79.
Let's say it's 9 months. It could be 10 months.
Okay.
Anything, it's less. I didn't say it was 2 years, right? So it's fewer than 2 years. It's more than 6 months because that's where we're approaching now. So if you just think about that time, it's, in the grand scheme of things. But we have to continue to maintain our facilities. We have to continue, as we talked about before, when you have 10 schools, if you replace one every 10 years, that takes you 100 years to replace each school. And so we've got to continue to move that along. I think I think it'll be interesting to see how this shorter time frame goes. It's a lot of work in a short amount of time, and we're doing something we've never done before. So I don't know. Do I worry about it? Yes, but I worry about lots of things. And right now I'm just worried about getting school launched also. For the thousands of kids and all the families who are attached to those kids. So Plenty of things to keep me up at night.
Yeah.
That's one of them. Yep.
All right, any other questions for Joe regarding the bond? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have potential calendar changes. And Greg, are you ready?
Yes, we brought, last time for the board meeting, we brought a change to the beginning of school, and we needed to complete agreements with our associations before we brought this piece to you. We wanted to, in looking at the whole calendar and making sure that we do instructional days and also have enough time for our teachers to be able to do grading with the 4x4 system for middle school and for high school. There are a couple of changes that we are recommending on this calendar. Conference days that were previously scheduled for Thursday, October 22nd and Thursday, March 11th. This proposed change would move those back to full student days and would keep the Friday, October 23rd and Friday, March 12th as part prep day, part conference day. And then the other thing is the middle area of the calendar that's in your packet adds when the quarters end. So November 20th is the end of the first quarter. The semester ending changes from the original January 29th, a week later, to February 5th. That is due to the change of the start in school. So that would be, that would make January 29th a school day and Friday, February 5th, a non-school day and a prep day for grading after the end of the first semester. Quarter 3 will end April 16th, and then second semester, the end of the school year, remains June 17th with a grading day on June 18th for staff. The quarter endings of November 20th and April 16th, the first and the third quarter, those are our Fridays that have a little bit different schedule anyway, but those will remain student days. And it is only the semester and the end of the year that remain actual days off to do the grading. So I hope that makes sense. And some of the other things that I realized is that even though we've looked at this calendar 9 trillion times, there were some things in the middle that needed some corrections. And I think now finally everything is I's dotted and T's crossed.
Don't make too many promises, because what happens? No, I'm kidding. I trust that this will be the last time. And we've had some pretty extraordinary circumstances that have made these changes necessary. That's for sure. Okay, are there any questions for Greg regarding these calendar changes? Okay, I would enter. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
No, it's okay.
Are you sure? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve the change of the 2020-2021 academic calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Greg. All right. Next up, we have Shiloh to talk about our food service contracts. Go
Perfect.
ahead.
Brandy, can I give the board a quick just update about how summer food went since we ended?
Yes, please.
This summer food was extraordinary. We had some amazing staff. We served 43,656 meals with 40 days of service. The community engagement was awesome. Library, the churches, handing flyers out. Kristen Stoller, a community member, was handing out hygiene bags for students. Just really impressive to see the community kind of rally with our school district and serving the kids. It was a pretty extraordinary experience to be a part of this year. So, looking forward to, kind of recreating it for this fall. And I will kind of transition here into our RFP. Does anybody have any questions about summer food? Okay. So our RFP, our first one is a Brett RFP. Cynthia Hyatt from McMinnville is our contract manager. Typically, we used to have 8 districts as a co-op going out for a bid. We got to encumber some more school districts locally. So 12 school districts total, and we had 2 proposals, one from Goody Man and Franz. And Franz is what we had for the last 5 years, but Goody Man won the award. They were most advantageous for their pricing for this year. And their taste tests came out really great. And also their procedures around COVID and how their employees enter and exit the building. So each year, it's a possibility of 4-year extension. So each year we'll go for approval. So this will be the first year of a 5-year contract.
Okay, are there any questions around the Bread RFP? No.
How does the price compare to in the past?
They were about $50,000 cheaper across the bid than the other company, which is pretty substantial. We have standard items, I mean, like hoagie sliced bread. 5 years ago, Goody Man lost probably about half of the state due to Franz being super competitive. So you always see these two fighting back and forth, and we knew that Goody Man was going to come under really aggressive this year.
Well, that compares it to Franz, but how does it compare to last year? The price?
I can grab that data. I don't have that right in front of me, but I can grab that to give you a comparison.
That'd be useful,
Okay.
kind of as a practice. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further questions for Shiloh, I would entertain a motion.
Do these need to be approved tonight, or could we wait until we get that amount that he's going to get us?
Shiloh, is there a specific timeline for this?
For our procurement stuff, it needs to be approved tonight because we start our contract in September 1st.
I think my voice of my question wasn't whether we were going to approve this or not. I'm just trying to track it. If it was cheaper than the only other bidder, I think we're probably going to have to bid. I'm ready to vote on it now. I don't need that information to vote myself.
Would you like to make a motion, Ron?
Sure, I'll move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve Goody Man Distributing as the award winner to RFP B2020, I guess that's B2020-2025, to serve Newberg Public Schools during the 2020-2021 school year. A lot of 20s.
I'll second.
Okay, is there more discussion? All right, with the motion in a second, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And abstaining. Okay. Greg, we have 1 abstention from Brian and 6 ayes. Okay, ready for the dairy?
Yep. So our next RFP, dairy, we went through the same thing. So I'm the head contract manager for the 12 school districts. We had 3 proposals, one from Alpenrose, Meadow Sweet Farms, who's been servicing our district for 10 plus years, and then Spring Valley Farms. And if you look at the grading criteria, it is most heavily weighted on costs, and Spring Valley was awarded and most competitive for costs. And again, we do, as a committee and the evaluation team, they look through all their COVID procedures and making sure that it aligns with our school district. And so same thing goes, this is the initial year and we have an option for 4 one-year extensions every year.
Any questions for Shiloh?
Yeah, Shiloh, are these all local? I mean, I know Alpenrose is, I've heard of one of the other ones, but are they all, within this area?
Yeah, so Meadow Sweet Farms actually is originated in Washington. So it was nice making the jump to Spring Valley because they are native to Oregon. They come right out of Salem Kaiser area is where their distribution. And actually they're a hub and they co-op with several different companies. So we will actually be getting Alpenrose milk from them because they co-op with other businesses, but they outbid Alpenrose of what they carry. Doesn't quite make sense to me of how that whole process works for who they decide to carry which milk products. But I know we'll be getting Alpenrose, which I'm very happy from, but it'll be coming from Spring Valley Distribution.
No, thank you. I'm glad they're local. Thank you.
Any other questions for Shiloh? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve Spring Valley Dairy as the award winner to RFP D 2020-2025 to serve Newberg Public Schools during the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And abstaining. Okay, 1 abstention from Brian and 6 ayes. Motion passes. All right.
One more.
One more. There it is. I was like, wait, are we on that thing? All right. Thank you, Shiloh. Go ahead.
So the next one is asking to approve the extension of food products and supplies to Cisco. We are a part of OCNC, which is a co-op with about 70 school districts to be competitive on tons of lines of food. It's a saver for us. We spend about $700 a year to be part of this co-op, and the amount of time that I spent on a dairy RFP, it is very advantageous to be a part of this group. Very competitive. We get to weigh our opinions. I'm actually a part of the OCNC board as well. And to approve what products we're going to be carrying as a cohort, it's been great, and I encourage us to continue this extension.
Any requests or any questions around this extension? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve the 2020-2021 Food Products and Supply RFP 53017 to Cisco, Portland.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion is second. Is there discussion? My dog. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Shiloh.
Thank you.
All right, Karen, we have you up next to discuss the code of conduct.
Absolutely. So first of all, the code of conduct has been in place in Newberg Public Schools for as long as we've been in business, I believe, but it hasn't been revised for quite some time. And so that's the background on it, that we look at this on a regular basis and revise it. As we go through different laws and policies change, we want to make sure we update it and also make sure that we're looking at how we're using it and how we're interacting with our public and with our students with it, so that we actually make sure that it's useful and it's accessible. So I have some slides to share. They're going to be fast, so I'm not going to read them to you, but I am going to at least frame and highlight some aspects of the revisions, which I think will help you understand where we're coming from in terms of our committee. So just a second here. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Hopefully everyone sees that. And in terms of the work, I want you to know that we really utilize the equity lens that the Newberg board really has given us in terms of really understanding how we wanted to make sure that we were accessible in all the different ways we need to be, and making sure we're aware and really clear about any equity issues that are connected to discipline. And we know we have some issues and some opportunities for us to actually get better at that. And so the board, the committee, basically went through this activity to really dig into the whole equity policy before we even started working on the revisions. In terms of timeline, it was formed in 2019. I was still on medical leave during that period of time. Derek Brown led, I think, 2 of those meetings. And then when I came back in January, I stepped into a leadership position with Greg Cascella in the committee. It really was just to review and update it. And we had 5 meetings altogether with our committee. Our committee was made up of teachers, student, which I'm super happy to see a high school student there, administrators, and we worked through monthly meetings until we got it finished. We decided about halfway through that we really didn't want to tackle the entire student parent handbook because it just didn't make sense to do that. We wanted to actually pull it apart and just focus on the code of conduct and then work on the content that we really wanted to focus on to make sure that parents and students were aware of resources as opposed to disciplinary process. And so we split it apart, and that's why you're seeing the code of conduct individually. In terms of the focus, I've already said it's really about usability, accessibility. We really wanted to make sure that it also reflects our diverse community. And I think the most important part of the work that we really did was work on alignment. The policy, the board policy, state law, and resources that are there for students and families as they work through a disciplinary process. So that was the goal. In terms of the revisions, just letting you know that you've got a large 30-some page document, but really the code of conduct revisions was focusing in on a really critical piece of web-based, and with a printed option. We really wanted to go more web-based because if you make it into a PDF and then you actually put it on the web, it's really hard to navigate. And so you'll notice that the version, hopefully you'll notice that the version that you have, even though it's in printed form, if you go and see the web version of it, they've got hot links all over the place and you can go directly to the policy that way. It's excellent in terms of people actually being able to navigate. Really shifts from punitive to restorative language. The committee really called out the language in the past code of conduct was very punitive. Not a lot of positive things to say about kids or families. And so it was very important that we change that language. And that was really a lot of the work, was changing that language. Really, the committee also wanted to make sure that we were aligning leveled interventions and discipline, just like we have leveled interventions in teaching and learning, right, in classrooms, that we basically see discipline as a way of education and educating students about behavioral expectations. And we need to make sure that we provide the supports for students to be able to do that well. In terms of usability, you'll see an at-a-glance student conduct guideline, which is linked to the interventions, and I'll show you an example of that. We wanted to make sure we had very clear definitions. A lot of the definitions in the past were pretty murky and it was easy to misunderstand. And so we wanted to clean those up. And aligning the discipline procedures K-12. I also worked very specifically on expanding the policy and procedure explanations so that if you're in the middle of something like an expulsion, if your family is, you know a lot more about it now than you did before because it really is expanded. So you understand what your rights are, they're there, you understand what the process is, you understand exactly what goes through, what you have to go through with the district and how we work in partnership to do that. I expanded very specifically special education law in discipline because we had a lot of work to do around that and it wasn't present prior to this. So you're going to see, like an example would be levels of intervention. Level 2 means that it's at the building level, you know, and it's actually administrative support. And if you look at the at-a-glance guide, you're going to see, for example, academic integrity code 1, it shows what level 2, that is a level 2 infraction, a level 1 or a level 2 infraction. Level 1 is the least invasive. Level 2, a little bit more support. Level 3, much more support. And level 4 is the serious misconduct, right? And those are rare, but there are definitely examples would be targeted violence, harassment, bullying that is unchecked, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, you know, but basically it goes up like a ladder, and these interventions are connected to that. So what we did in the last couple of weeks is we actually looked at the anti-racist proclamation, because we wanted to make sure we were aligning our work with what the board's message was to the community, to school community, that this is exactly how we want to proceed. We want to make sure that our discipline processes are not, that they are productive, and that they are actually transformational, as opposed to discipline only for the purpose of discipline. And we know we have issues connected with disparity of outcomes in disciplinary processes based on race. And we know that very clearly because the data is very clear. So we met as a committee just in the last week, and we went through a process of making sure that, again, the definitions of discrimination in terms of racist discrimination is now in our code of conduct. It was not there before, and now it is. We also added a component about sexual orientation. So what you've got in front of you, and it's in the packet, is race and national origin discrimination definition. And it's really about what it means to harass someone because of their race or color, and then examples of what it can look like. And as a veteran administrator, I will tell you that this is very helpful when we actually have really hard conversations with students and families about what's going on with the behavior, that it's targeted, and that it's actually clearly racist in intent, right? The language is there, the harassing behavior is there. And, you know, I think that obviously as an administrator, you want to always pay attention to this, but when we write it out and we make it really clear and we have a process in place for it, I think that helps tremendously for students to make sure that they have justice as they go through the process. And especially when they have the courage enough to report it. We know that most of this is unreported. In terms of next steps, we really are going to be working with building administrators. I will be working with building administrators to review the code of conduct. We had multiple administrators on the committee, but we want to actually take it into the administrative team. We want to focus on professional learning, and specifically about reflective practice and discipline. That means many times we don't really talk about it with one another, and we need to not just talk about it, we need to really process it and look at it deeply and try to figure out what are some things that are going on in our disciplinary processes that might be really unhealthy, or we just don't know what we're doing, and we don't know exactly that we're doing it that way, and we need to actually look at it really closely. And the alignment of the referral processes, we have now an aligned secondary referral that goes all the way 612, and we'd love to do the same thing with our elementary principals as well. We continue to collect and use district-wide discipline data. We are in the middle of a discipline project right now about the last 3 years of discipline data by infraction and by school and by grade level. And so I would hope at a later date we can look at that data together. We're going to continue to meet through the fall and work on the parent student resource sections. And I'm opening up, with permission from the committee, opening up the next section so that we actually have a more diverse group that will be working on the student and parent resource section of the handbook. So that is my little overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there questions for Karen regarding the code of conduct review?
Yeah, this is Dave. I do.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just curious. I mean, I got a few questions. In my experience at the high school for 20 years, we were pretty inconsistent in our discipline. How is this going to fix that?
Yeah, that's really a good point, Dave. I know that I was there as well, and I know that there was definite inconsistency. I think that by aligning the practice and talking with one another, K-12, about exactly what we mean when we say harassment, what we really mean when we say assault, how we're going to respond in those situations, and making sure that we're touching base with one another, but also really learning about that. And you know what it is? It's about collaboration. I think that we get better when we collaborate. When there's inconsistency, it's because there's no collaboration or little collaboration, that we don't even, ask one another, what did you do for that? Did you send that kid home, or was that kid still in school? That kind of thing. We need to actually break those barriers down and get it, I think, away from our sense that we are alone in the work with discipline, and we're not. we need to be aligned as a district on that.
And what I would add, being on the committee and watching the work that Karen has done, the one example she gave you with that chart, that is all new to this. We have not had that type of clear delineation of infractions and what the responses will be in writing for parents and staff to look at and to agree to. And so this process has brought a lot of really good work that we have never had before as a district.
Okay. No, thank you for that. I mean, a couple tough questions. I'm not trying to make this sound any different than it is. You know, Karen or Greg, you guys are both on the meeting. For teachers, you know, I heard a lot of frustration over the years. I would get called in, you know, when administrators wouldn't take care of kids, and try to do the best we could, you know, from my level. The teacher support seemed to be very frustrating to the staff. Now, I'm only speaking for the high school here. I can't say anything about the middle schools. But the teachers felt like they were handcuffed when it came to writing a referral up. We talked about this back in August or September. I know Greg's got the notes. And they felt like a lot of teachers, not everybody, some teachers never write a referral. They don't need to. I mean, they're amazing. Hugh Anderson, for example, you know, never has problems. But a lot of the teachers would not write referrals, Karen, because there was no admin support, or it was inconsistent. Is that going to be addressed? Because I know that was a big frustration from the staff standpoint.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. In fact, we made sure that we went through the association with all of this language, and the code of conduct was reviewed by the association through the lens of what is this doing to support our teachers in the classroom, because that's the lens, right? Now, does this piece of paper, or is this packet going to change practice? Yeah, eventually it will, because we will use it on a regular basis. And I think that's the only thing that does change practice, is for us to reflect on what we're doing and also make sure that we're connecting with teachers to make sure they're feeling like it's effective. Is it perfect? No, I will guarantee you, I've been in the biz for a while, and I know that sometimes misunderstandings happen, but also sometimes things don't get done that need to be done. And I think that that's just part of the communication that needs to occur between the administrative staff together with each other to support each other, but also with teachers, with administrators, to problem solve when things go sideways. And I think you can't share too much information when you've got a frustrated staff member about a disciplinary process, except for confidential student information. You can't, and that's frustrating, Dave. They don't like it when we say we can't share that information, you know, like handicapping conditions and all kinds of things. We can't, because it's confidential. But we can talk a lot more than we do, I think. And it's not an easy answer, right? I mean, this isn't going to fix things exactly. It is going to provide us with a really clear and cogent way for us to say, hey, listen, this is a tier 1 intervention. What were you doing in the classroom to help with this situation? I think that's a really direct conversation that we haven't had before, because we didn't have it in a visual or a writing piece that we were like, level 1 is in your classroom. How can I support you? Level 2 means I'm going to come in and help you. And then we're going to work together to try to figure that out. And when it gets above that, it's admin, right? And then everyone who works on it, I know that in the field, people want to make sure that they close the loop. It doesn't always happen the way teachers expect it to. And I think that that's something that is about communication again, to make sure we communicate well.
No, again, I appreciate that, Karen. I think I just had a lot of, I'm trying to think of the right word for feelings towards the staff, you know, because teachers have the toughest job.
Yeah, they do.
I just know, I'm hoping through this whole thing that, you know, I would like our teachers to know, again, I'm speaking for the high school, but that they have an administrative team that doesn't have to agree with them, but they'll listen to them. I mean, you probably know, you know, in the last number of years, it's been a lot easier for kids. You know, I can't say it here on a school board meeting and be really crass, but they can be very, very, very rude with their words towards the teacher. And I just think those are the kind of lessons our kids need to learn, and our staff is going to have to learn how to deal with that with the admin. You know, I always would tell staff at the end of the day, the admin has to make that decision. That's their job. But I just know the staff, from my experience, would really appreciate that dialogue being really, really clear. Karen, I just had one more question.
Sure.
This isn't meant to go sideways on this question, but when that last slide you put up, when you look at systemic racism in that statement, and you look at white supremacy, how does that work in this this discipline process?
So it works with, it works around the concept that we as administrators and as teachers need to look through the lens of who our students are and for us to be able to help them learn new ways of behavior, new ways of behaving in a school setting, right? Sometimes racism, for this particular one, it was really around the area of harassment, you know, and what happens when a student of color is targeted for harassment by another student in the school, and how do we help unpack that and then resolve it, right? And we really looked at a lot about restorative practices, and restorative practices is just a fancy way of saying, let's sit down and talk with one another, and let's solve the problem in the long run, as opposed to a short-term discipline process, right? Let's actually get to the heart. First of all, we don't use that kind of language in our school. That's not negotiable. We can't do that. We can't use racially targeted language in our school. Yet I know as an administrator with a lot of experience in both the high school and the middle school, that language is used every day. And I think that we need to be honest about that and to see through that lens of what's it like to be a student who face that kind of language on a daily basis. It's hard for adults to hear it, and it's hard for adults to interrupt it. But it's our job to make sure that we protect all of our students and make sure they're safe. And they're not safe when they're being called racial names, or they're being treated very, very harshly based on their race. Does it happen all the time? I think we need to talk to our kids about that and find out exactly what is happening and how we can help them. So I hear what you're saying. What I'm saying is the discipline policy just needs to be clear that we will not tolerate racist behavior, racist symbols that are created to demean or diminish or harass other people based on their race or based on their sexual orientation or based on their sexual harassment. When that's a really clear policy.
Karen, last thing I'll just say is I hear what you're saying. And again, in my experience, you know, kids can be tough, K through 12. They say awful things. I mean, we all experienced it at some time in our school career. I definitely think it's a real deal. When you say person of color, I guess my question is, you know, I've seen it go every which way, you know, black to brown, white to brown. I mean, I don't like using colors, but I've seen it go every which way if we're going to use that. I mean, so are we going to be consistent in this across the board? If let's say we have two white kids and a kid uses a racist terminology towards that kid, or we have somebody's brown or black saying something. I mean, I guess I'm hoping that we're really consistent so the kids get a consistent message.
Yes.
So when we're not around and they're talking and they're at McDonald's having lunch and there's a big group of kids that they're going, hey, we can't do this. The school's, you know, this new thing is going to be consistent, and it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
We got to do this the right way, whether you're white, brown, or black. I
would say that any racial harassment, it doesn't say that you have to be a person of color to be racially harassed. I think that any racial harassment is not acceptable in any way. It basically destroys community, right? And it destroys a sense of safety. I think that we need to make sure that we are consistent in the processes that we use, and that's what the code of conduct is for. It's very clear about that when you say something, we're going to respond to that if it is diminishing or demeaning to another person and it's targeted racial harassment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. So because of time, we're running a little bit behind schedule. This is only information tonight. The board's not voting to adopt this. So we've got a couple of weeks to look over it. And I would encourage all board members to look over it and to forward any questions that they need or points of clarification to Karen. in the next coming weeks until we see it again on our agenda.
Thank you so
just
much.
one
Thank you,
question,
Karen.
Chair, if I could ask one question.
Absolutely, Brian.
Under the bullying and harassment section, there's this statement: bullying and harassment is unwanted aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance.
Yes.
So is that saying that if you have two students and one of them seems to be bigger than the other, then it's impossible for the smaller child to harass the bigger child? Can you speak?
No. Yes, I will be happy. I'll be happy to speak to that. No, it's not about size. It's an imbalance of power, which is based on aggression sometimes. It's based on the ferocity of the words being used sometimes. It's based on, I mean, I've had some small kids who've been really, really awful bullies, right? Of basically going out and going after kids and doing it in such a sly way that it's really hard to catch. But it's an imbalance of power because that harassing kid is using his or her power to attack, to make someone feel awful about themselves in the school setting. It's sometimes language, it's sometimes pushing, it's sometimes, there's many different examples of what bullying looks like, and sometimes it's difficult to catch, but from the adults in the space. And sometimes kids will come forward and they will report it.
So I guess my question is, what are you?
Brian, I hate to do this again. I don't want us to have this dynamic tonight, but we are running behind schedule and I've asked that all questions be forwarded to Karen. Can we agree on that?
Well,
in
I would
the presence of time and keeping us on agenda.
Is needed. If what you're saying is the aggressiveness is the power imbalance, then wouldn't bullying and harassment is unwanted aggressive behavior be enough? I don't understand what we are getting by adding that involves real or perceived power imbalance.
Yeah, so I want to honor people's time. Brian, I would love to can we talk on the phone? I would love to communicate with you about that.
Sure.
Okay, so absolutely. In the next couple of days, let's get on the phone and we'll talk about it, and then I can understand further about. I think I understand what you're talking about, but I'd like to understand it further.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll meet back at 9:01. Okay, we are at 9:01. Let's wait for a couple more members to rejoin us. Bob, are you there? And we just can't see you again.
Yeah, I'm back, and when I look at my little window, I see that I'm frozen. So
Okay.
let me
as
try
long as you're
stopping my video but I'm here.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Dave will hopefully join us here in a second. Okay. So next up on the agenda, we've got finalizing our board goals. We had some bracketed language in the first two goals that we were going to circle back to. Does anybody have any ideas about wording? Ron, you are our wordsmither, so I'm leaning on you. No, I'm kidding.
Are you speaking more about the bracketed pieces?
Yeah, I think there's only a few spots here in the first one and the second one. Greg had captured our discussion and thoughts and put them in bracketed language. So I didn't know if anybody had any suggestions on those or if we wanted to just remove the brackets. Any thoughts from board members?
I'm fine with removing the brackets.
For sections A and B, which is the ones I can see, yes, I'm fine with all those too.
That was sort of my thought.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say that was sort of my thought, was to take the brackets out, and the rest of it I was comfortable with.
Madam Chair, I move that we change commit to becoming an anti-racist board to work to ensure equality of opportunity for all students.
Okay. The motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion?
For me, the term anti-racist has not a universal meaning, and we can't define for everybody what it means. And there are people in our community who will read that as we're against particular people who we think are racists. And I don't think I want to communicate that with this. I don't think we need to have raise barriers to people buying into the substance of what we're trying to accomplish. If by using the new, the phrase that Brian suggests, we can help people take this on its own merits and not assume, as Brian has himself, that what we're trying to do is to adopt the ideology of Mr. Kendi, or as other people have said, that we're trying to adopt all the ideology of Black Lives Matter, that will help. Because I think we can get agreement from the vast majority of community, including some people who'd be uncomfortable with those movements, on the specifics. If we don't, on the specifics of what we propose, if we don't seem to communicate that we're trying to do more than what we're trying to do. So I'm in favor of the way that of changing the title. I would fit in one more point. I would myself be content just to have anti-racism, which is not the way that the term is used. It takes it one step away from the anti-racist term and deals with most of my concerns. But I would also prefer the title that Brian's suggesting to the title we have.
Could I have you repeat that, please? I was in the screen sharing and I couldn't get it down in the minutes as you were.
Oh, for crying out loud, Greg! It was just perfect the first time. I'll try.
Oh, no, not you, Brian. I need Brian's wording.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm moving to replace the title of Section A with work to ensure equality of opportunity for all students.
And I seconded that.
Is there more discussion?
And I want to make one more point on this, and that is I am not wavering on the commitment to do the work that we committed to do in our resolution. I think we're best off if we can communicate this in a way that's welcoming to as many people as possible.
Can you repeat one more time what your proposal is, Brian? I'm sorry.
We're amending it to read, work to ensure equality of opportunity for all students.
Equality or equality?
Equality.
Equality.
Okay, the motion and second, is there further discussion?
Would we still to use the measurements we had to reach out to the people of color community and to study diversity, or the 3 points that we had down?
I understand this proposal to be just changing the title and not any of the content, and I'm not willing to change any of the content.
Okay, and personally, I would go for changing anti-race to anti-racism rather than changing it to Brian's. I think that's more, because I was the one who proposed the goal.
Yeah.
And that
Rebecca.
addresses what I feel is important.
Rebecca, what do you
So-
feel again? Can you tell me again?
I would feel to change it to anti-racism to alleviate the what Ron said about anti-racist, but it at least portrays what the initial reasoning behind the goal was.
So Rebecca, my concern is that anti-racism has a lot, just the term anti-racism has a lot of baggage that is wrapped up in that I don't necessarily feel is what we as a board want to bring to the Newberg public school system. I voiced some of those ideas that are wrapped up in that ideology earlier.
Yes, but I think you're, okay, go ahead.
I want to get away from the term anti-racism, because that is a specific set of ideas that are, I believe, divisive for our community. And the term itself, I think, is a large part of what's getting in our way in terms of coming to a consensus where we can try and improve things for the students in this district instead of fighting over this ideology.
I agree about the, ideology implications that aren't a part of this discussion have been brought into this. Talk about, Black Lives Matter and socialism taking over our school district, and a Department of Anti-Discrimination taking over, the country. That's not anything I envisioned. It's not part of what I've heard folks talking about. What I want to keep in there is the emphasis that we are going to be actively working to reduce discrimination in our district.
And I think the reason I feel so strongly is what the people who spoke to us, the girl who was a student who spoke about what she has experienced as an Asian girl, and the different families that have shared what they've experienced as members of a different race in our community.
And I guess the problem that I have with the new proposed title is that we get into, okay, equality. I'm not striving for equality necessarily. I want equity. And in order for us to have equity and meet the needs of our students and our community, equality is not going to do it. It's not going to cut it. It's not going to be enough.
Can you define
For me, I want to support Rebecca in keeping it at just racism, anti-racism, rather than anti-racist. I'm fine with that change. I'm not going to support the proposed title change.
Inez, could you define for me what you mean by equity, please?
Yeah, meeting people where they're at, their needs.
When we say
So-
to
And
ensure
equality is giving people, every single person, the same thing. That's not enough. There's already barriers. There's already gaps.
So Inez, it's equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome that this calls for. So I think I'm not sure there's as much difference. I'm not sure what the difference is between equity and equality of opportunity. Can you help me with that? Because some people do make a distinction and I haven't been able to catch it.
Ron, are you asking about the difference between equality and equity in regards to?
It's not equality, it's equality of opportunity is clearly what it says. It doesn't say equality of outcome, which I agree is not our goal right here. Our goal is equality. I think the way I've understood it is our goal is equality of opportunity, that everybody has the same chance, to have a fair start in life. And they're not racial or ethnic or other barriers that are keeping them back. That's what I mean by equality of opportunity. Now, if that's not clear enough, we may not be able to use it. But it is not, you can't, if we just stop at equality, that's not what the concept is. It's not equality of outcome, it's equality of opportunity. And then that's, maybe, I'm asking you a question on the spur. Maybe you're not ready for an answer off the top of your head. But it seems to me that from my point of view, the term equality of opportunity implies what you just said, that we meet them where they are and get them to where they could be at the starting line with everybody else.
It doesn't translate like that to me. And maybe that's just the different lived experience that I have. So again, I'm still not going to support this.
That's fine, understand.
So can I just jump in quickly on this, because the terms equity and equality have actually very different kinds of meanings. And so when you say, if you're going to give equality of opportunity, it means everybody gets the same book. But it may be that some kids need a different level of book to get to the same concept, and that would be equity.
No,
it may be that they
need.
It does mean that, because if you say equality, if you see equality of opportunity, you give everybody the same opportunity, but some people may need different opportunities, and that's the difference between equality and equity.
It's not equality of opportunity if I hand a Spanish-speaking kid an English book. That's not equality of opportunity. That's equality of treatment, and that's not exactly what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for, everybody have the same opportunity. And if a Spanish kid, if a Hispanic speaker doesn't speak English, shows up at school and it's all done in English, we haven't given that student anywhere near equality of opportunity. So equality, yeah, it's not strict equality of treatment. People are going to be treated differently if we're going to get them equality of opportunity. But if this is too complex, then that's fine. The board can vote down that, and I'll vote for the anti-racism with enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think you said it right there, Ron. If as a board, we can't even deduce what this definition is, it feels like a difficult goal to try to communicate to our constituents.
Well, maybe if the goal is
definition of equity from this group.
I think, Brian, if you're asking for a definition of equity, I think Inez gave a good one, that everybody gets treated based on where they are. But see, this is why I like that equality of opportunity idea, because it tells us why we're giving them different treatment. We want them to all have the same chance. But I'm not insisting on this. I just think that this is a good discussion to have. And if we move away from the anti-racist to anti-racism, that addresses more than half of my concern.
Okay, with a motion and a second, is there more discussion? Dave, looks like you've got something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just think, I feel like as a board, when I ran for the school board, it was to come in here and represent the entire community. And, like we have to sometimes check your opinion at the door. We have to check, I think, or I love, or whatever. And in our community right now, and out there, this is a really mixed bag on this. And I think we're still early in the process where this is going to shake out to. That's what I said at the last time, is like, we need to keep having this discussion because it's hard. We knew it was going to be hard. And, we come down to just, we get tired and we want to stop talking about it. So we just vote and pass something through. And I think we have to represent every single person in this community. And I'm talking about every person. I'm talking about whatever side you're on right now on this issue. We have to represent every person in this community well. And if we go through this and rush this thing and don't get it right, then we're going to do a disservice to somebody in this community. And that's not I don't feel like that's our role as a school board. We're supposed to speak for the entire community. And I still hear a mixed bag from all of you guys, like on exactly why and how we should frame this thing. And I think it's just another thing where a work session or whatever it's going to take, Brandy, to keep having this talk until we can all come up with, you know, the right things to say. Because I believe at the end of the day, I think what we should want as a school board is every single student in our district to be treated well, have the opportunity, the equity, the chance to succeed in the Newberg schools. And our job as a board is we got to take down those hurdles. I agree with that. We can't, and I don't think the school board should be a hurdle. And I still feel like we are right now because we're still kind of butting heads on this. I think we need more discussion.
I agree. It's a hot topic. However, we've been discussing this since June. I think we've had a lot of time to prepare for it. I think we've had a lot of time to come to meetings with language. Brian has made a motion. There's a second. Do we have further discussion on his motion?
I would just say that if there is an insistence on keeping the term anti-racism in the language, it indicates to me, and I think it will indicate to a lot of people, that the reason behind that is to push an ideological agenda at the level of the school district.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But if we change it, we're also going to create some impressions that we don't intend to create too. And so it's a dilemma. It's not clear cut.
I think we should go with the language that is most likely to tear our community apart and still get us what we want. And to me, equality of opportunity is something that everyone can get behind, and we can drive towards that goal wholeheartedly.
Not everyone. I don't get behind it. So no, not everyone.
Neither do I. I think anti-racism is a compromise between the two ideas of anti-racist versus equity. But I am hearing everything you guys are saying. Can we take a vote on this?
Yes. Well, I would like to say one more thing. I don't think we're representing the entire town here, Brandy. We're not. We're putting something in there that some people want and some people don't. And this is the kind of language that, you know, we're here to teach kids and get them ready to be seniors and move on or whatever time they leave our district. And this is going to get in our way of that.
Dave, if we can't say we're not a racist school district, how are we teaching our kids anything on how to treat people and how to dismantle systems that oppress them? I mean, it's a legitimate question.
I get that, but I'm sitting there going, you know, when you bring this up again, we have a part of our community that would agree with you. And as with your big smile there, I'm sure with you too. And I think with the opportunity to sit back and say, there's a lot of people in this community that don't agree with that anti-racist statement. And we're here to represent the entire community. And if we're only representing part of the community, then we never had to make this resolution in the first place. We didn't. We have that in there, or we could have changed our policy because we could have done that. Other school districts did that and they didn't come up with a resolution.
But Dave, we passed the resolution. The board passed the resolution. We're talking about the goals right now.
I get that totally.
Dave, what you're asking for is an ideal that we represent the entire community, which by your terms would mean we can't take any action until every member of the community agrees. That is not what we're going to be able to do. I think by having conversations like this, which we can continue to have, we are doing our best to try to represent the entire community. There's only 7 of us. We're not drawn at random from the community, so it's difficult. But we cannot wait until the last member of the community says, okay, I'm happy with that. Because that'll be years. In the meantime, these kids are growing up in a system that's not being fixed. I want us to keep moving. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. But representing the community doesn't mean that everything we do is agreed to by the entire community. If they don't like it, they can vote us out and get new members in. But if we otherwise, this is, yeah, I have a long rant. I don't want to get into it. But the basic idea is that, sure, we have to try to represent every member of the community. We have to listen to every member of the community, but we cannot wait till every member of the community agrees to do something. We're going to have a bond that will probably pass with 53%. That doesn't mean we have to wait for the other 47% to go along before we execute the bond. That's just the way it works in a democracy.
Or the bond could fail 45 to 55 and we don't get our bond. And
Right. And so the 45 that think we need it don't get what they want. That's the way it works.
Hey, Brian, do you mind oh, okay, Rebecca, one more point, and then Brian, would you please restate your motion one more time after Rebecca?
I just want to say that we do listen to everyone who speaks. Brandon Cooper, Lori Albright, all the ones who spoke tonight. And we value their opinion. But in the end, we have been voted in to vote what we feel is best for all the students. And I feel if we, I'm saying feel, I think, but I think anti-racism will address an issue that has been brought to us by many, 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 many students and families.
But what about all of the ideas that are wrapped up in the word anti-racism? I mean, that has a set of ideas behind it that have nothing to do with what we want to accomplish. So why would we use that term when it comes with that baggage, when we can use a similar but different term? And I'm open to modifying my language that I'm suggesting that can note, because Brandy, you're using the plain language definition of anti-racist. And if that was all there was, I'd be hands down for it. But that's not all there is. There's a lot of radical ideas that are going under the name anti-racism.
Right, but Brian, we've laid out the 6 points that we're gonna do. We've laid out what we're gonna do. We aren't saying we're gonna support anti-racist and, you know, a Department of Justice that goes after people. We're not buying into conspiracy theories here. We're saying we're not gonna be a racist school district, and here are the 6 ways that we're gonna approach that. That's it.
It's not a conspiracy theory when you're quoting what the man has said. That's absurd. Yeah,
I don't believe Mr. Kendi is on the school board.
I'm sorry?
And I don't believe Mr. Kendi is on the school board. So he isn't proposing anything that we have put into these goals. All these goals have come from the members of the Newberg School Board.
Bob, you don't feel like our school board is influenced at all by that, though?
I have not. I haven't read Mr. Kendi, and I doubt that I will.
I have not read Mr. Kendi's works. I'm not actually very familiar with them at all. I think that any policy that we have, you could find extremists in any direction who could turn off a lot of people. And I don't believe our school board and our community is looking for extremism and pushing extremist views. I'm in support of anything that actively recognizes existing discrimination in our district and in our community and actively works against that. Yes, well, I'm using the colloquial, the common language definition of what an anti-racist is. I'm not buying into some theory of, you know, what the radical end of that might be. I'm saying what I see the end of that being is a school district that is actively working to correct the racism that has existed in our community, that recognizes that exists and actively works to address that and end that. That's what I'm voting for. And that is not captured by just saying ensure equality of opportunity for all students.
Okay, so what if we put and oppose racism in our school district at the end of it? Or work against racism in our school district?
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Would you like to amend your motion, or otherwise let's go for a vote?
In my motion to read, work to ensure equality of opportunity for all students and I'm open to suggestions, but
eliminate racism in the system.
And eliminate racism in our school district.
So it's the work for equality of opportunity and to eliminate racism in our school district.
I'm 100% on board with that.
I would second that too.
Okay, with a motion in a second, can we please take a vote? All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, fails 4, 2, 3.
Okay. I'd like to move that we amend the title to be commit to become an anti-racist.
Hang on just a moment, please, Ron.
Mhm.
I need to get down who
Good.
who voted for.
Who voted for? Dave, Brian, and Ron.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm ready for you to go ahead with your motion, Ron.
I recommend that we change the word anti-racist to anti-racism in the title.
I second that.
I feel like we've had a lot of discussion on this. Does anybody have anything new to add? Okay, with a motion and a second, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Rebecca, I can't see your hand if it's up or not. Okay. Okay, all those opposed? Okay. Right, passes 5-2 with Dave and Brian in opposition. Okay, now we've got the bracketed language issue. Would anybody like to make a motion on that, or do we need to go through each one if anybody has any suggestions?
I move that we accept all the bracketed language.
I second it.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'm comfortable with the bracketed language.
Okay.
And somebody tell me on number 3, exactly, since I'm on the board, what kind of equity lens I'm supposed to use. I don't quite get that.
That'll be part of the process, is creating what equity lens we're going to use. There are a lot of models out there, and people have chosen different parts and different pieces of those models. And I read this as saying we're going to create an equity lens, not we're going to use one that's already existing. And that'll be a process that we'll discuss.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with a motion and a second, all those in favor of removing the bracketed language, please raise your hand.
Not
And all
removing,
those-
keeping all the bracketed language.
I'm sorry, of keeping the bracketed language, my
Yes.
mistake. All those in favor of keeping the bracketed language, please raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed? And abstaining? Okay, Brian abstained, Dave voted against, the rest voted for, so it passes. Passes. I have never had a goal conversation go on like this in the board, and I am hopeful that this really in-depth thought and conversation that we've had around these goals will equal some really amazing work for us as individuals and a board for this district. Thank you for everybody. Okay, let's go on to designating our board and ad hoc committees. There is actually a change to this, and I have.
Are we not voting to adopt the goals?
Oh, thank you, Brian. That's a really important step after all of that. My mistake. All right. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adopt the board goals.
I'll second.
Is there discussion?
I'm sad. I was hoping that I could get on board, but I can't support something that contains reference to the ideology of anti-racism. It's just too fundamentally flawed at its core. And you can say you're taking the plain language interpretation of it, but I don't believe you. I think you're pushing an ideological agenda here. And I think
Thank you, Brian. I've denied quite several times that that's what I'm doing, and that's a personal affront. You've just called me a liar.
I wasn't speaking.
You called me a liar, Brian. Did you mean to do that?
It gave me the same reaction because I've stated that that's not what I'm doing.
Quite clearly, I've stated it. I'm as much a capitalist as you are, Brian, maybe more.
Okay.
I would suggest you guys read some more material on anti-racism. That's the only thing.
Okay.
I don't have to, Brian. I believe what I believe, and nobody else can make me believe something by using a term I enjoy. Okay? So stop.
Okay. With the motion in a second, I would like to take a vote on this because this conversation can clearly go on for a long time. And I encourage board members to meet and have a deeper discussion on this if they feel called to do that. With a motion in a second, all those in favor of adopting the board goals, please raise your hand. And all those opposed? Okay, passes 5-2, Dave and Brian voting against.
May I make a comment?
Sure, go ahead, Rebecca.
I just want to make sure that when the board votes and approves something such as the anti-racist resolution or the bond issue or the goals, when the board votes, that all the board members go along with it, then there's no talking about it or against it later on. Is that true?
Yes, as a board, we are moving this direction. As a board, we chose to put the ballot on the measure, or I'm sorry, the ballot on, I can't even talk anymore. We're moving forward with the bond on the measure in November.
But we're
moving forward
moving.
to goals of the board. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
And it can be incredibly difficult. And I think, we've had some very robust conversations around this, but you are absolutely correct. As a board, this is what we're doing, and it is important for every board member to understand that.
Can I add something to that? Then if we're going to do that, you guys might not be hearing this, but the way I've been treated the last 2 months, I haven't felt much support from you guys at all. So when we talk, Rebecca, about supporting this resolution, I know this is like a whole vote type thing, so it's not just an individual. But if we're going to play that card, then I've had people in the community lambaste some of our votes and you guys, and I've refrained from getting into a personal conversation about you or Ron or Bob or Brandy or Inez or Brian. But I don't feel like that's came back, because I know other things have been said by some of you guys out there about me, because I've been told that. So if we're going to play that card, let's play it all the way.
Okay,
Dave, if you have that complaint, you need to bring it to the board members that you think are doing that. It's not fair for you to take third-party accusations and then never let us defend ourselves either. That's the same, by the same token, isn't it, Dave?
No, I agree. Yeah,
Okay,
totally.
good. Thanks.
And I believe Rebecca was referring to, once we pass something as a board, we all have to support it, whether we supported it in the voting or not. Right,
Right.
Rebecca?
That's what I meant, yes.
I read Dave Amendment rights. Thank you.
Yeah, he does. Everybody does. Nobody, he has the right to not support. I will point out that I think we're all in agreement about the bond in general, at least. And there will be a cost if we are dissenting on other issues. Maybe not, though. Maybe if it's true, if we can show that all the different viewpoints about the anti-racism stuff are all in support of the bond, that could actually help the bond. But that's a complicated nuance we're expecting people to pick up in difficult times. So we're in a position where we're running some risk.
Okay.
And Dave, I just wanted to say, I would refer you to what we have board policies for referring complaints about board members. Throwing out a generic blanket, vague accusation against board members for perhaps belittling you or slandering you doesn't help the conversation. If you have a specific complaint, I would encourage you to follow the procedures that we have set in policy for handling complaints like that.
Okay, I'll find that. Thanks, Bob.
And I would also encourage you, if anybody on the board feels that there's been a personal affront by somebody, to reach out to that person and speak with them, and to keep those channels of communication open. Okay, let's move on to our committees here. There's one thing, this is actually not a motionable action item. This is for information only. Policy BCE clearly states that the chair creates the committees. So I've asked for feedback from all board members, and we've had a couple of weeks to give that. And what is in our packet is where I have landed on these. So again, it's for information only. I'm really excited that we're having 2 ad hoc committees, and we've got the PAC to work on this year. There's certainly not going to be any shortage of ability for board members to have lots of impact on these committees, which I think is really exciting. For the ad hoc committees, I would encourage those committees to meet as soon as possible so that they can establish their charter and establish how they're going to start recruiting members from the community. Also, all of these committees are in adherence with public meeting laws, so they will all be held in public with minutes taken. Are there any questions?
How did we pick these people, Brandy?
Oh, how were they assigned? I asked, sent an email and asked also as a reminder in the last board meeting for people to send me their requests of where they'd like to be. And I tried to put people as much in line as that as I could. I also was working with, I was trying to get everybody on 3 committees and trying to ensure that, you know, some committees will by their nature be more active and that nobody was overwhelmed. And I wasn't putting a burden on anybody as far as time commitment. So trying to balance that out. And then also trying to balance out sort of personalities and what I thought would be a well-rounded committee.
Well, if we're speaking about personalities, I would like to have an additional member or somebody be a part of the financial audit committee, because I don't feel like my ideas are going to be validated in that space, given my experience in the last year working with my colleague board members.
Is there an additional 4th person who wouldn't mind serving on the facilities committee? Or no, I'm sorry, not facilities, finance.
Brian, I didn't hear what you had to say.
Sorry.
I was just saying, you just did that thing you were complaining about me and Dave doing earlier. I was just curious if you were going to say anything about that.
No, it wasn't the same.
No, she clearly said how she felt about it. Is there anybody who would be willing to serve as the 4th person on the finance committee?
I would.
We can't, can we have a 4th person and not cross over the quorum level?
Yeah, that's a good point, Bob. And I do think BCE, let me pull it up really quick, says 2 to 3 members. Let me find it. I think it's 2 to 3 because of the quorum issue. I will say the policy also states that the board chair can serve on any of the committees in an ad hoc position. I don't know, Inez, if that would address your concerns.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. If you have the time to serve as an ad hoc.
Would that still violate the quorum?
Not, well, in an ad hoc position, and they're also public meetings, and I wouldn't be a voting member as an ex officio.
So I missed something there. Why are you there, Brandy?
So with the finance committee, Inez says she didn't feel.
I believe it's personnel, isn't it?
No.
No, it's finance. But you can't have a quorum and discuss board decisions with a quorum present. You'd have to have less than a quorum present to be able to discuss it.
Okay, then I would be fine being dropped from the committee if that's easier, so that it's still 2 to 3 members and we don't go over the quorum. I just don't want to be in an unhealthy and unsafe environment for myself.
I guess I missed something, guys. In there, what happened, Inez? What's in the healthy?
Our personalities just haven't meshed well. We don't believe or have experienced the same things, and I don't want to be put in a position where my ideas are not going to be validated. And like, I feel like I would be wasting my time, honestly.
Who's all on the committee, guys? I don't know.
The issue in your concern, in your mind?
What was that?
That's a safety issue in your mind?
It is for me.
Brandy, who's all on the committee now?
Right now it's you, Brian, and Inez.
Oh,
Is
me,
there
right?
anybody who would be willing to step up for a 4th committee to fill that spot?
I can.
Rebecca? Okay, thank you. Inez, I apologize for putting you in that position. And thank you, Rebecca, for stepping up. Okay. Okay, next, certainly not least, but last, we have an amended timeline for our superintendent evaluation. This is partially really a representation of kind of what's going on in the meeting tonight. We've got a lot of things on our plate right now and a lot of things that we are dealing with and a lot of things that Dr. Morlock is dealing with and trying to get school up and running. And we really felt like starting the evaluation process at this point would be very difficult. So In speaking with him, we agreed that shortening it up to 5 months would be inappropriate. We'd start the process next month. But it is a shortening of that process and not a changing of the policy, but a variance from that policy. So it does need to become before the board and be action. Are there any questions around that? No? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Newberg
Go ahead,
School
Bob.
District Board of Directors approve acting outside of policy CBG for the 2020-2021 school year and give the superintendent 5 months notice for the criteria of evaluation as mutually agreed by the superintendent.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion and second, is there discussion? I can't believe nobody's just like chomping at the bit to get this on our plate too and get this going.
Joe's in agreement.
Yes, I am. We discussed this before, and the timeline, just with all the things we're doing right now, it makes more sense to get it into the 5 months, and we just have to make sure we get it super clear when we do it instead of getting through. So yeah, it makes most sense this year,
Okay.
unlike any other year we've had. So
Or will hopefully have again. All right, with a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of shortening that timeline to 5 months, please raise your hand. Okay, passes unanimously. All right, next up, we've got just a quick agenda review. So I spoke with Greg and can hopefully offer some support in trying to get our agendas going further as we traditionally do if possible, although Greg clearly has plenty of things also on his plate at this point. So I appreciate the work that's gone into creating what we have tonight. Attendance Awareness Month proclamation, consent agenda, school opening update again. We'll be approving the code of conduct, so those revisions, so please, we'll be voting on it. So please take the next couple of weeks to look over that and follow up with Karen with any questions. We'll be discussing our superintendent and board working agreements, discussing the super evaluation process, and approving that timeline. Yep.
Brandy?
Oh, sorry, Rebecca, just a second. Dave just raised his hand.
Oh, Rebecca, go ahead if you'd like to. Go ahead.
And I just want to know, last year when we wrote down what we wanted to learn this last year, how did we do?
The board education topics?
Yes.
I think we hit all of them. I would have to go back and look though, and I can do that.
We did.
Great.
Go ahead, Dave. Do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I mean, just want to throw it out there. You can think about this for this meeting or next or whatever, but I would really like to revisit just quickly the Pledge of Allegiance before our board meetings. I just feel like we really kind of dropped that one because I know we went into the COVID thing and it's different, but I think it's important. And I would just like the board to consider doing that again. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah, I don't think there will be any objections to it, and I'm comfortable with adding that to our next agenda.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.